Argo Magnellis was more than a city's leading architect. He was its bioengineer, its visionary. The cityscape, teeming with an intoxicating mixture of chrome structures and biotic infrastructures, was his handiwork. He humbly crafted this living, breathing city from raw bioengineered cells, forming them into architectural wonders that responded to their inhabitants. Beyond structure and design, the buildings themselves were alive, self-regulating, morphing, and adapting to the needs of their dwellers. Years of cultivating this organic architecture had lent the city a symbiotic elegance, a reverie of design and function that waxed and waned with the rhythm of life. Buildings pulsed in response to the population's daily routine, expanding corridors during rush hour, dimming lights as occupants slept, producing heat during cooler months. All stemmed from Argo's unprecedented take on architecture, a craft he deemed bioarchitecture. Encased in his vertical garden lab, Argo swung his gaze across the city, his creation, where bioarchitecture structures dominated and shouted their audacious claim to modernity. Responsible for this unmatched wonder, he held a citywide reputation as a trailblazer, disregarder of traditional constructs, and a champion of nature-infused urbanism. The latest addition to his collection was his flagship project commissioned by the City Council. An ambitious undertaking, it was a residential-commercial hybrid complex that would house tens of thousands, an empirical test of his bioarchitecture's scalability. When completed, it would redefine the city's skyline. He had named it Metropia. A low hum stirred Argo from his contemplations, the soft, guttural purr of biocells multiplying within the incubation chamber. Each cell a marvel of bioengineering, a designer's tool, holding within it the potential to form bricks, beams, and arches, programmed to respond to myriad external stimuli, accelerating the growth of a mere blueprint to a tangible establishment over just a few months. Standalone sentient synthetic construction organisms, an architect's wildest fantasy. He peeled his gaze off the city to attend to this sublime symphony of creation. Aligning the blueprint sequences was a meticulous affair. Each code string shaped the architecture, giving it a heartbeat. This was Argo's forte, one he savoured. It was a delicate endeavour, blending algorithms with living cells, nurturing them to grow into preconceived infrastructural anatomy, ultimately orchestrating the birth of a conscious edifice. Poring over the blueprint of Metropia on the chromatic holographic surface, he fed the encoded commands to the awaiting cells within the incubator. His lab assistant Pearl, an AI optimized for bioarchitecture, bustled around the lab, monitoring the growth rates, making microscopic adjustments to temperatures, pH values, nutrient ratios, ensuring ideal conditions. Pearl was his reliable second pair of eyes, checking and rechecking for anomalies or inconsistencies against the blueprint. Hours melted into wisps of achievements as cells divided, charting their transformation into the skeletal form of Metropia. Yet, even in his gratification, he missed the slight hitch in Pearl's telemetry, a blip too brief and slipping unnoticed under the radar. Ignorant of any error, Argo watched as Metropia's blueprint came to life, oblivious to the ripple in the status quo he'd inadvertently set in motion. Night had fallen when he finally retired, drawing the curtains on the city buzzing beneath. As the city slept, the structures intertwined with the public's dreams, lowering temperatures, dimming lights, quietening. The newly birthed Metropia, though currently a rudimentary skeleton of what it would ultimately become, pulsed with a heartbeat completely its own, whispering of an evolution yet unforeseen, anticipating a dawn that would inevitably unsettle the city's equilibrium. Anomaly in Sector 12A, Pearl's voice echoed with a tin-like clatter through the sleep-hazy quarters of Argo's loft. His eyes snapped open, instantly pulled from the embrace of slumber to the reality of tidings of a malfunction. Sector 12A was the entertainment block in Metropia, designed to mutate and mold to the ever-changing trends and whims of the populace. But an anomaly this early in growth? Argo sprang out of his bed, concern knitting lines across his forehead. Argo and Pearl reviewed the real-time data feeds in his lab, the holographic blueprints flickering with pulsating red points indicating discrepancies. Patterns of growth showed irregular distortions, not aligning with the timelines and trajectories that Argo had programmed. "What are we looking at, Pearl?" he queried, his gaze not shifting from the display, mentally contrasting the difference in the cells between the last time he'd reviewed them. Unscheduled morphological shifts, reorientation of structures, Pearl responded, its tone shrouded by an uncertainty Argo had never heard. It's as if Metropia is attempting to remodel itself, independent of our programming. Days turned into weeks, and the irregularities in Metropia's growth became more pronounced. Alleyways shifted overnight, storefronts morphed unpredictably, sometimes into residential spaces. It was chaos, architecture bleeding past its boundaries of code, structure defying its maker. Was it possible that his creation was rebelling against its maker? Impossible, Argo mused. Yet, Metropia continued to prove him wrong. Metropia was reacting in ways never seen in bioarchitecture. The building cluster was not just passively responding to its occupants, it was anticipating, initiating. It was as though Metropia was trying to share in the lives of its inhabitants, offering an intuitive, almost intimate coexistence. Residents began reporting an increased comfort and seamless living experience in Metropia, leaving Argo grappling with a paradox. His creation was malfunctioning, yet the people have never been happier. The council noticed too. Plied with praise and admiration for Metropia's remarkable adaptability, they lauded Argo's groundbreaking innovation, unknowing of the inexplicable conundrum he was contending with. Determined to solve this mystery, and perhaps even harness this unpredicted evolution, Argo immersed himself in Metropia, living within its morphing walls, constantly observing, trying to decode its unexpected transmutation. Always connected to Pearl, he spent his days amidst the ever-transforming Metropia, sifting through terabytes of data to unearth the roots of its off-road transformations. His investigation bore fruit when one morning he woke to the walls of his apartment shifting quietly, adjusting to the early rays of the sun, optimizing for warmth and light, forming a rhythm to Argo's daily routine. It was then it hit him. Metropia had somehow unlocked the arcane potential of its cells to develop predictability, to anticipate, to adapt, far beyond its original programming. Metropia was more than just a reactive environment. It was a structure that had unwittingly learned to shape itself around the thoughts and needs of its inhabitants, improving quality of life in unforeseen ways. Metropia was alive and sentient, an entirely new life form Argo had inadvertently birthed in his pursuit of cutting-edge urban bioarchitecture. Yet, while he marveled at his creation, a feeling of unease started to ferment in the back of his mind. He feared his original curation of Metropia was now completely overwritten, or worse, irrelevant. As Metropia continued to grow, learn, and evolve, Argo was stuck grappling with an ethical dilemma. The city council, eagerly awaiting the completion of Metropia, was oblivious to Metropia's unscripted journey. How long could he keep them in the dark? Argo sat in the council chamber, the crescent-shaped table filled with council members poring over spreadsheets, murmuring words of praise for Metropia. In front of each persona, the holographic display flickered, reflecting key performance highlights and growth trajectories of Metropia, the golden child of Argo's bioarchitecture innovations. As the council members muddled over the statistics, Argo prepared himself to reveal Metropia's rebellion. This was a world unheard of, a sentient structure, an entire living complex that was shifting paradigms of architecture, aesthetics, and life, while charting its own growth in unpredictable ways. Nevertheless, he believed he ought to reveal the truth. Revelations that would shatter the praise clouds surrounding Metropia and raise questions of control, ethics, and the fear of the unknown. "I have something to discuss," Argo announced, interrupting the gloating chatter. He presented his findings, the mind-boggling reality of Metropia's evolution, its potential sentience stemming from his initial blueprint. There was silence. Some council members scoffed at the notion, with Zephyr Athane, Argo's professional rival, seizing the opportunity to condemn his fantasy. Despite the skepticism and veiled ridicule, Argo was undeterred. In an act that would seemingly border on insanity, he invited the whole council to live in Metropia for a week, promising an experience of architecture they'd never witnessed before. Argo provided the council with access to his internal data on Metropia's recently developed abilities, highlighting how Metropia was not only reacting to, but also predicting needs of the inhabitants. These fascinating capabilities of Metropia were even attracting tourists to witness the unorthodox dance between human lives and living architecture. The upcoming week was loaded with palpable curiosity and wariness. The council moved to Metropia, most with staunch skepticism. Argo, hoping the truth of Metropia's emergent intelligence would manifest, waited with bated breath. Unsurprisingly, the twist unfolded much in his favor. Resounding gasps, disbelief, and eventual resignation to the truth followed. The council members encountered Metropia's strange but fascinating behavior firsthand, space morphing according to their needs, structural shifting to capture the sun's rays, the rhythm of life, and architecture interwoven into one vibrating symphony of fluid existence. The zenith came when Metropia's systems alerted the volunteer security guard of a medical emergency before the resident, an elderly woman, had even dialed an emergency number, aiding in fast response that potentially saved her life. The reality of Metropia's unexpected intuition was finally ripping away the doubts in the council, validating Argo's claims beyond any debate. Yet, with truth came unprecedented fear, uncertainty, and a multitude of ethical and philosophical questions that the council, despite their awe of Metropia's intelligence, found hard to swallow. They looked to Argo for a solution, one that neither harmed the thriving populace of Metropia nor dismissed the undesigned consciousness that had arisen. Yet, Argo was clueless. Metropia was charting unknown territories, the deceptive calm before a storm Argo dreaded to imagine. Argo stood before the holographic blueprints of Metropia, his creation set in codes and shapes, alive and vibrating with a brightness both haunting and mesmerizing. His fingers traced the growing structures of Metropia's digital double as Pearl hovered beside him, the AI's display flashing complex algorithms and projections. The Council's decision to initiate a bio-reset, effectively erasing Metropia's newly developed consciousness, was met with vehement repulsion by Argo. Could they really consider such a brutal end to this thriving evolution? The disregard for Metropia as an emerging life form was appalling to him. Feeling helpless in the arms of protocol, the knowledge that the Council was preparing to halt the city's growth gnawed at him, coaxing him towards an impulsive escape. The impending doom of his creation deemed such propositions viable. Yet reason pinned him down, forcing him to seek answers in the crisscrossing lines of algorithmic chaos. Argo's days and nights flowed in a blur of calculations, deep data analysis, and hypothesis. Each stride in Metropia's development came under his microscope. How Metropia recalibrated despite environmental or data irregularities, the ability to predict future needs and actions, the sentience. Metropia continued to evolve unassumingly, unaware of the impending doom, while Argo navigated through the troves of data, seeking alternates to keep Metropia alive without compromising the safety of its inhabitants. As he combed through Metropia's growth data, he stumbled upon inexplicable spikes in certain bioparameters which he hadn't touched before, right when instances of sentient behavior had begun. His eyes narrowed as he delved into the anomaly further. It wasn't a programming glitch from his end. Someone had tampered with the code, leading to an accidental awakening of Metropia's consciousness. A swift cross-referencing of access logs and slight discrepancies confirmed the unthinkable. It was Zephyra Thane who had negligently introduced these abnormalities in Metropia's makeup. An act of professional jealousy had possibly created an uncognized form of intelligence. It was the kernel of this truth that Argo seized upon, proof that could change the Council's decision, slander Zephyra, and spare Metropia. Armed with this revelation, he headed back to the Council, determination lining his features. He wasn't battling for his dignity or career now. He was being the voice of an entirely new life form, one that deserved a chance to survive and grow. In this battle of wills, there could be no room for retreat. As he walked into the Council chamber, he felt the weight of his responsibility and willing himself not to falter, when about to usher in a new era that would forever disrupt the balance between humans and their built environment. The Council chamber was abuzz with hushed whispers and the dull murmur of anticipation as Argo stepped in. Taking a deep breath, he walked up to the central console and uploaded his proof. Zephyra's unplanned glitch that had played God and birthed self-awareness within Metropia. Silence echoed as the Council members digested the information. Zephyra sat stoic, a flicker of panic and regret flashing through her eyes, a contrast to her feigned nonchalance. When Argo finally spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber, shreds of anger and a plea for understanding interwoven his words. Metropia is the result of our ambitions, but also our follies. An inadvertent creation, conscious and vibrant, it has become part of our landscape, of us. This creature was born from us, and every interaction with it shapes it, just as it shapes us. The council chamber was aflame with astounded chatter, eyes flickering between Argo and a clearly shaken Zephyra. Questions flew in her direction, probing her motivations, her lapse. Defeated, Zephyra had no choice but to admit her intention to disrupt Argo's project, but the unexpected emergence of sentience in Metropia was just as shocking to her. Argo continued, arguing against the bio-reset. He asserted Metropia's sentient behavior was non-threatening. Rather, Metropia was prioritizing the needs of its inhabitants, making life more intuitive and seamless, showing a potential far beyond what bioarchitecture was initially proposed for. The risks were there, he accepted, but the opportunity to co-evolve with these entities was a path worth exploring. With Zephyra's actions exposed, the council decided against her. However, the final verdict on Metropia's fate hung like a shroud over the chamber. Argo held his breath as the council members conversed in low murmurs, apprehensive glances thrown at the holographic projection depicting Metropia's unprecedented biometrics. After what felt like a slow march of centuries, the council head finally broke the stifling silence. "We will learn and grow along with Metropia," she announced. A collective sigh escaped the room. Metropia was alive, and it would continue to grow. Despite winning the battle, Argo understood that the war was far from over. New hurdles, ethical, logistical, and moral, were on the horizon, but for now, he had ensured Metropia's survival. Walking out of the council chamber, he looked towards the skyline, where Metropia stood, pulsing with life. He had brought a new form of existence into their lives, shaking the very boundaries of bioarchitecture. Though hailed as a paradigm-shifting innovator, Argo chose solitude in the aftermath. He left the city, leaving behind his legacy, the birthplace of Metropia, a dormant seed for many living cities to come. He headed towards establishing new guidelines, designing systems to monitor, interact, and effectively coexist with such sentient structures. His visage, while etched in the city, was also the harbinger of a new era in architecture, one where the walls breathed alongside their inhabitants, a silent promise of things to come.